Everything seemed picture perfect. The Lorenzi family from a small town in Italy looked like they had stepped right out of a postcard. A lovely home in a quiet area, 2 wonderful sons, and a happy couple, Anna Maria and Stefano. But on the morning of January 30th, 2002, their peaceful life turned into a nightmare. With trembling hands, Anna Maria dialed emergency services, screaming that her youngest son, Samuel, was dying. A helicopter arrived in mere minutes, but what the medical team found inside the house sent shivers down their spines. Samuel lay unconscious, the bedroom floor covered in blood. Anna Maria, visibly shaken, kept repeating that her son's head had exploded. Who could have done something so horrifying? Who is Anna Maria Francione? Anna Maria Lorenzi, born Francione, came into the world on August 19, 1971, in the stunning Italian city of Bologna. She was the youngest of 6 children in a tight-knit, joyful, and relatively well-off family. Her father ran a successful construction company, while her mother devoted herself to raising their large family and making their house a warm and welcoming home. From an early age, Anna Maria was driven to excel in everything she did. She was a top student, took dance lessons, and always made sure she looked flawless. In her family, she was the beloved favorite, cherished and protected not just by her parents, but also by her older siblings. Yet, despite the comfort and privileges of her upbringing, Anna Maria yearned for independence. So, as soon as she turned 18, she left her family home to start a life on her own in a different city. She enrolled in university while working as a hotel receptionist, quickly earning promotions to become a manager. Her reputation as a valuable employee who could handle even the toughest situations spread fast. True to form, Francione excelled here as well, meeting Stefano Lorenzi. In the mid-1990s, Anna Maria met a young man named Stefano Lorenzi, who was staying at the hotel where she worked. The chemistry between them was immediate. They exchanged phone numbers and soon began to meet regularly. Their relationship developed rapidly, and it wasn't long before Stefano asked her to move in with him. Stefano was a successful engineer, also originally from Bologna. But as he got older, he decided to trade the hustle and bustle of the city for a quieter, more peaceful life in the countryside. He had saved up enough money to buy a spacious house in the small mountain town of Cong, nestled in the Aosta Valley region. With a population of around 1,500, life in Cong was slow-paced, and the crime rate was practically non-existent. The perfect family. In 1995, Stefano proposed to Anna Maria, and she happily accepted, eager to become his wife. The two were married in a beautiful seaside ceremony full of romance. Afterward, they moved into Stefano's house in Cogna. Almost immediately after their wedding, Anna Maria became pregnant, and by the end of that same year, she gave birth to their first son, Davide. In 1999, the couple welcomed their second son, Samuel. After Samuel was born, Anna Maria decided to leave her job and devote herself entirely to managing the household and looking after the family. By all appearances, the Lorenzi family was truly happy and harmonious. Everyone who knew Anna Maria noted how incredible she was as a homemaker, a flawless wife, and a devoted mother. Despite the demands of caring for Davide and Samuel, her home was always immaculately clean, and she presented herself as if she were always ready to attend a high-profile event. Stefano's career thrived, and he received a promotion that allowed him to fully support his family, providing them with a comfortable and worry-free life. In the fall of 2001, Davide started school and immediately stood out as one of the brightest students in his class. Teachers praised his intelligence and curiosity, often using him as an example for his classmates. To the outside world, the Lorenzis seemed to be living a dream life, filled with love, prosperity, and happiness. It looked like nothing could shatter the ideal world they had built. But in January 2002, an unimaginable tragedy occurred, and understanding what had happened would take years of investigation. The disturbing call to emergency services. On January 30th, 2002, at around 9 in the morning, a frantic woman called emergency services. She said her son was seriously ill, vomiting blood, and begged for help to arrive as quickly as possible. Roughly 20 minutes later, the small town's residents heard the whirring of a helicopter flying overhead, searching for a safe spot to land. When the medical team arrived at the scene, they were first met by a woman named Daniela Ferrata. Daniela was a neighbor who had rushed over after hearing Anna Maria's desperate screams and was waiting outside with her for the medics to arrive. Inside the house, on the first floor, the family's doctor, whom Anna Maria had also called, was already there, giving Samuel emergency care before the city medical team could step in. Upstairs in a second-floor bedroom, the 30-year-old mother clutched Samuel, pleading for someone to save him. The room was covered in dark stains, and Samuel had a gauze bandage on his head, soaked through with blood and tissue. He was unconscious and appeared to show no signs of life. He was rushed to the hospital by helicopter, but despite the emergency team's best efforts, they could not resuscitate him. Less than half an hour later, his parents were told that Samuel had passed away. It quickly became clear that Anna Maria had initially provided inaccurate information. Samuel had not been vomiting blood. Instead, under the bandage on his head, he had multiple deep wounds, inflicted with extreme force using a sharp object. He had been struck several times until his skull fractured in multiple places, causing devastating brain damage that left him with almost no chance of survival. But what horrifying incident had unfolded in this seemingly perfect family home? And who could have wished such harm upon him? Strange reactions and confusing testimonies. From the start, the situation surrounding Samuel's case seemed bizarre and suspicious. His mother, Anna Maria, couldn't give a clear explanation of what had happened, and even the witnesses who were first on the scene couldn't make sense of it. The head of the family, Stefano, rushed home from work but arrived only after Samuel had already been airlifted to the hospital, and he didn't get the chance to say goodbye. When, half an hour later, the Lorenzis received the call informing them that their younger son had passed away, Stefano collapsed to the ground, covered his face with his hands, and broke down in tears. Anna Maria, however, remained calm, hugged her husband, and reportedly said that she wanted to have another son to replace Samuel. Both she and Stefano later vehemently denied that she had ever made such a statement. Anna Maria seemed to be in a state of shock. She mumbled incoherently and couldn't piece together the sequence of events. Her testimony was inconsistent, and at times she contradicted herself, while the statements from witnesses only created more confusion. However, when it became clear that foul play was involved, every detail had to be thoroughly examined to understand how and why this had happened. Anna Maria's version of events. According to Anna Maria, she woke up around 7 a.m., made breakfast for her husband, and saw him off to work at around 7:45. She then woke up Davide, fed him, and packed his lunch for school. It was at that moment she heard Samuel crying and rushed to his side. Samuel was complaining of a headache, so Anna Maria moved him to her bedroom so he could rest while she walked David to the bus stop. The bus was about 5 minutes late that morning, so she waited with David until he got on. When she returned home, she found Samuel in a horrifying state. Blood was everywhere, and she couldn't understand what had happened. Thinking he had been vomiting blood, she immediately called the family doctor who lived nearby and could get there quickly. Upon discovering the wound on Samuel's head, Anna Maria screamed, and her neighbor, Daniela Ferrata, rushed over after hearing her cries. Daniela found Anna Maria covered in blood and tried to understand what had happened. The panicked mother screamed that Samuel's head had exploded and begged for help. Daniela, feeling overwhelmed, went into the house and walked toward the bedroom, but she ran outside almost immediately, trying to suppress her nausea. What she had seen looked like something out of a horror film and defied explanation. Anna Maria kept repeating that Samuel had complained of a headache before she found him in that dreadful state. The family doctor's verdict. The first person to assess Samuel was the family doctor, who arrived shortly after the call. Anna Maria had told him over the phone that Samuel had been vomiting blood and then later said that his head had exploded. This description sounded bizarre, but the doctor tried to come up with a plausible explanation. He speculated that perhaps Samuel's skull bones had fused improperly, leading to a cerebral aneurysm that burst, causing extensive brain damage and intense pressure, resulting in the fractures. The doctor's observations and shifting testimonies. The family doctor could only dress the open wound and administer an anti-shock injection before the emergency helicopter arrived. However, he later admitted that even then, he knew Samuel had little chance of survival. The doctor also noted that Anna Maria's clothing, hands, and face were covered in blood, but he didn't think much of it at the time, assuming she had tried to help her son, touching and moving him in desperation. But when he learned that the medical examiner had counted 18 separate wounds on Samuel's head, inflicted with a sharp object, likely a knife, and that this was undeniably a case of premeditated violence, the family doctor's story began to change. Suddenly, he recalled something unusual. He had seen small particles of brain matter tangled in Anna Maria's hair and couldn't understand how they had gotten there. Revenge of a spurned lover? Despite the inconsistencies and strange details, authorities were in no hurry to press charges against Anna Maria. She maintained that everything had happened while she was at the bus stop with her older son. According to her, Samuel had seemed perfectly fine when he woke up, just a bit fussy and complaining of a headache. Davide backed up his mother's account, stating that he hadn't seen any blood and that his brother had still been in their parents' bedroom when they left the house. Could an unknown assailant have waited for the house to be empty, except for Samuel sneaked inside and committed this brutal act? Nothing had been stolen. There were no signs of forced entry, and the sheer level of violence suggested a deeply personal motive. Investigators theorized that perhaps Stefano had a secret lover who wanted revenge, or who sought to force him to leave his family by taking drastic action. This theory was thoroughly examined, but it turned out that Stefano was a devoted husband and caring father with no history of infidelity. With no other leads, suspicion fell squarely on Anna Maria, but the police needed to gather more evidence and understand the full context and motivations behind the horrific act. Crime scene investigation and evidence collection. The murder weapon used to inflict the fatal injuries on Samuel was never found, neither inside the house nor anywhere on the surrounding property. The parents' bedroom was soaked in blood, as expected given where the crime had occurred, but there were no foreign fingerprints or clues beyond the presence of the Lorenzi family members. Faced with limited evidence, investigators decided to use an advanced forensic technique for the time: bloodstain pattern analysis. This method could help determine the trajectory and angle of the strikes, the position of the perpetrator, and how they moved during the attack. The room was covered in blood spatter on nearly every surface, so this analysis would be an extensive and painstaking process. Blood spatter analysis and unsettling evidence. Blood spatter experts were brought in from the capital, but their findings were far from conclusive. Given the relatively new nature of bloodstain pattern analysis at the time, the specialists had differing interpretations. A new theory emerged. Perhaps a deranged intruder had broken into the house and attacked Samuel. The force of the blows was so extreme that blood even reached the ceiling. After committing the act, it was believed that the attacker had quickly left, taking the weapon with them. However, the perpetrator would have had to escape wearing blood-soaked clothes and shoes, yet no such evidence was found. No bloody footprints, only bare footprints belonging to Anna Maria. Furthermore, none of the neighbors reported seeing anyone suspicious. At that hour, the streets of Cong were bustling with people heading to work and school, and a person covered in blood would have certainly drawn attention. Behind the bed where Samuel was attacked, investigators found a crumpled pair of Anna Maria's pajamas stained with blood. Oddly, there were no bloodstains on the floor beneath them or in that corner of the room. Anna Maria had changed clothes before taking Davide to the bus stop, and she hadn't put those pajamas back on when she returned. So how did the blood end up on them? Moreover, the stains were not consistent with someone using the fabric to apply pressure to a wound. Instead, there were clear spatter marks. Investigators also found her house slippers tucked away, with blood traces on the soles. all the evidence seemed to point toward Anna Maria as the one responsible for the crime. As mentioned before, Anna Maria had always aimed to be the best at everything from a young age. In the bustling city environment, she excelled. Top of her class in school, an exemplary university student, and a highly valued employee at the hotel where she worked. But everything changed drastically when she married and moved with Stefano de Cogne. In the small town, everyone knew each other, and the bored housewives often gossiped about each other's homes, families, and even appearances. It felt as though they were always searching for flaws to have something to discuss, and Anna Maria felt she could never afford to make a mistake. She kept her house impeccably clean, dressed like a Hollywood star, and ensured that Stefano thrived in his career, while Davide excelled in a gifted program at school. Maintaining this image required constant effort and left her both physically and emotionally drained. The strain of a second child. The real struggle began after the birth of her second son. Anna Maria had a difficult pregnancy, followed by severe postpartum depression. Her health deteriorated. She lost significant weight, suffered from insomnia, and experienced constant anxiety. The family doctor prescribed mild sedatives, antidepressants, and sleeping pills. She was also advised to attend a few therapy sessions with a psychologist, but no one saw any real danger in the situation. According to the doctor, Anna Maria never exhibited any serious mental health issues, never posed a threat to herself or others, and showed no tendencies toward aggression or violent behavior. Yet she was highly sensitive to how others perceived her, took any criticism deeply to heart, and often became consumed by her anxieties about maintaining her image. Confiding in a neighbor. Anna Maria once confided in a close friend and neighbor that her younger son, Samuel, was too fussy and difficult to manage, unlike David, her older son. She even described Samuel as unattractive and said she felt he didn't fit into their picture-perfect family. However, no one could have ever imagined she might be capable of harming him. Arrest and the search for irrefutable evidence. The case drew significant media attention. Although the murder weapon was never found, and Anna Maria adamantly denied any involvement in the crime, she was arrested on March 14, 2002. Forensic experts argued that the blood spatter on her pajamas could only have been deposited during the assault on Samuel, based on its specific pattern and location. Prosecutors believed that Anna Maria had forgotten to dispose of this crucial piece of evidence after changing out of her pajamas and getting rid of the weapon. By the summer of that year, however, Anna Maria was released on house arrest while the investigation continued. The blood spatter analysis was dismissed as unreliable, given that this forensic technique was not widely accepted or proven in Italy at the time, making it impossible to verify its accuracy. The prosecution then spent an additional 6 months bringing in experts from abroad. Using a life-size mannequin and a stand-in with a build similar to Anna Maria's, these experts reconstructed the attack on Samuel. They demonstrated that the blood spatter pattern could have ended up on her pajamas if the person wearing them had been seated on the bed across from Samuel, striking downward with an object similar to a large hunting knife. The case was reopened in January of the following year, but Anna Maria was not detained again because she was pregnant. Psychological evaluations also indicated she was not a danger to herself or others. In March 2003, a year and 2 months after the tragic event, the Lorenzi family welcomed a new son, whom they named Giovanni. An unexpected piece of evidence. The Lorenzi case had become a media sensation, turning into a public spectacle followed by tens of thousands of people. Representing Anna Maria was a flamboyant defense attorney named Carlo Taormina, who wasted no time accusing the investigators of gross incompetence. Determined to expose flaws in the prosecution's case, he launched his own investigation. The defense's theatrics and shifting testimonies. Every time defense attorney Carlo Taormina appeared before the media or in the courtroom, he presented new theories and supposed evidence. Davide, who had initially provided consistent testimony, suddenly remembered seeing a man in black near their house. However, he couldn't describe the stranger in any detail. Prosecutors later accused Taormina of intentionally distorting the boy's memories to introduce the idea of a mysterious outsider. Taormina also claimed that the weapon used was not a knife, but something like a carpenter's hammer with a claw end, whose curved metal hooks are typically used to pull out nails. In his version, the number of strikes was actually half of what was initially reported, as each blow created 2 wounds. This theory suggested that the assailant could have easily finished the attack within the brief window while Anna Maria was walking Davide to the bus stop. A crucial footprint. The most significant new piece of evidence was a shoe print found on the blanket wrapped around Samuel. The print was approximately a men's size 10, indicating the possible presence of a man at the scene. Strangely, this footprint had not been documented during the initial investigation, even though the bloody blanket had been collected as evidence. The situation appeared to be a case of serious negligence, with signs that key evidence proving Anna Maria's innocence had been overlooked. However, further examination revealed that the footprint was not left in blood. It was a regular dirt stain and couldn't have come from the perpetrator. It was later proven that the print belonged to a forensic photographer who had accidentally stepped on the edge of the blanket while documenting the scene. The photographer was charged with professional misconduct, and Anna Maria once again remained the primary suspect. Courtroom battles and new theories. In July 2004, Anna Maria Lorenzi was found guilty of the premeditated crime against her son and sentenced to 30 years in prison. Yet, just a week after the verdict, she made a shocking claim. She accused their neighbor, Ulisse Guicciardo, of being the real criminal. According to her, this man had repeatedly tried to flirt with her, but she had always rejected and ignored his advances. Stefano supported his wife's statement, confirming that Ulisse had indeed shown an inappropriate interest in her. Guicciardo was brought in for questioning, but he was stunned by the accusation and denied everything. Moreover, he had an airtight alibi for the day of the incident. He had been traveling for work, and his account was verified, clearing him of all suspicion. Outraged, Guicciardo filed a countersuit, accusing Anna Maria of defamation. New legal troubles. In October 2004, a new trial began, this time focusing on the defamation case and accusations of tampering with evidence. Anna Maria was once again found guilty, and her sentence was extended by an additional 1.5 years. To complicate matters further, her attorney, Carlo Taormina, was stripped of his ability to represent her in court. A year later, the Lorenzis put forth yet another theory, claiming that their neighbor Daniela Ferrata, the same woman who had been the first to respond to Anna Maria's screams, could have been responsible. They suggested jealousy as a potential motive. However, the investigation found no evidence linking Ferrata to the crime, and her alibi was corroborated by multiple family members. Declared insane or not, Anna Maria Lorenzi's new defense attorney adopted a different strategy, arguing that his client needed a psychiatric evaluation. He claimed that Anna Maria had experienced a temporary mental break and was not aware of her actions. This new angle allowed for procedural delays, and Anna Maria was transferred from a prison cell to a hospital ward. In April 2007, however, the prosecution successfully proved that she was mentally competent and fully aware of her actions. She was found guilty once again, but this time the court considered mitigating factors, such as her prolonged postpartum depression that had allegedly led to a psychological crisis. The fact that she had 2 sons also weighed into the decision, resulting in a reduced sentence, from 30 years to 16 years in prison, with the possibility of early release after serving 11. In May 2008, another appeal filed by Anna Maria and her lawyer was dismissed, and the sentence remained unchanged. Around the same time, her former attorney, Carlo Taormina, filed a lawsuit against her, demanding nearly 80,000 euros in unpaid legal fees or the confiscation of the Lorenzi family home. His claims, however, were deemed invalid, and he was ultimately unsuccessful in recovering any compensation. Sentence reduction and release. In 2013, Anna Maria's sentence was reduced due to good behavior. Her punishment was changed from incarceration to house arrest, allowing her to return home to her family. Psychiatrists concluded that she no longer posed any danger to society. By 2019, she was granted early parole. Anna Maria and her husband, Stefano, are still together, though they have since relocated to a different city. The house where the tragedy occurred was sold, as the Lorenzis could not bear to return there. It's worth noting that none of Anna Maria's loved ones ever abandoned her. Her family stood by her side, convinced of her innocence. To this day, the Francione family believes that the real perpetrator of the crime against Samuel remains at large and unpunished.